Cup, we know that Al-Qaeda has infiltrated parts of the Syrian rebel army. I mean, we know that to be a fact, as Al-Qaeda does, sort of exploit areas of chaos and conflict in these situations. But I'm wondering why this administration has decided that Al-Qaeda being present is a reason not to intervene, as opposed to a really great reason to intervene.
Well, I mean, it's a great question. You know, this is a conflict that's been going on for 17 months now. For the first year, the administration was saying that the reason why we didn't want to get involved was because we didn't know who the opposition was. Then we began to see al-Qaeda elements creep in, and then we said we don't want to get involved because there's al-Qaeda. But what all of this has done is it's opened the door for really bad actors to get involved in Syria and to gain more leverage. So you're looking at the Qataris or the Saudis. These are regimes that like to promote radical Islam throughout the region. They're the ones who are gaining leverage right now in Syria, while we virtually have none.
So if I can ask a question, this is Amy here, about the nature of the attack today. Max Boot, writing for Commentary, said that if this was in fact a suicide bomb, then we have a moral obligation and a national security obligation to get involved, because it means that you have some pretty bad radical people involved in overthrowing the Assad regime, who would then take over if they topple the Assad regime. So the idea or the fact of it being a suicide bomb is a very important fact to establish and know the truth of. Do you agree?
Well, I'm not sure that I would agree that this is the one thing that should prompt us to get involved. But I would say this, that first of all, we can identify that the FSA was able to infiltrate the Assad regime at an extremely high level. It's believed that this is the bodyguard regiment that was infiltrated, and it's believed that it was a suicide bombing. And if you look at the people who claimed responsibility, one was the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, and the other one was a Brigades of Islam. Now, when you think about, you know, just what it takes to create a suicide vest, this is not knowledge that the average person has, and we're looking at very dangerous elements that have gotten involved in the FSA. So if this is all true, it's an indication that the FSA is not really all that we'd hoped that it would be. But that's not the main reason to get involved here. From my perspective, the main reason to get involved is because Iran has been relying on Syria as a crutch throughout for many years. It is an important tool for the Iranians in the region. And if we're looking to really weaken this regime that was responsible for allegedly carrying out an attack in Bulgaria today, that's developing a nuclear weapon, that has been sponsoring Hamas and Hezbollah, killing our men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan,
Right.
This is a way to weaken Iran. And I think that is much more pressing than whether there was a suicide bomber involved today.
So, Buck, let me ask you a question jumping off something Jonathan just said, and that is, and you mentioned this earlier, you questioned whether or not the United States had a capability of doing something covertly or overtly. And Jonathan just said that whether or not this was a suicide bomb attack actually reveals the sophistication of perhaps the Free Syrian Army and the opposition. I don't know. I'm asking you, what level of coordination would this kind of attack require? Can we say that this would have required outside assistance, possibly even covert United States outside assistance, either in the form of the bomb or access?
If you're looking for the kind of expertise needed to build, for example, a suicide vest, you'd have to look no further than just across the border in Iraq. They've been perfecting this for years in the use against U.S. troops and soldiers. In fact, a lot of those networks are still quite active in Iraq, and there's a very long border there which is sparsely patrolled. So that technology could easily have transferred over to the resistance. I think it probably is transferring over to the resistance. We've already seen foreign fighters from a variety of countries ending up in Syria. In fact, the Syrian government officially complained to the United Nations, of all places, about Tunisians showing up in Syria to fight jihad. So there, as we've established, there is this element, but of course it's a small element. The problem, though, comes in with if we are not pushing for one side on this in any capacity, again, whether it's official or unofficial, you could see the most dedicated, the most organized, and the most battle-hardened rising to the top here. And in this case, that would be Islamists across the border in Iraq and around the world who have been fighting jihad.
But nothing about this attack suggests that we are involved. That's what I'm asking. It doesn't suggest that would have required our assistance?
And SVEST is something that regionally, like I said, they've been doing this for quite some time, and they're quite good at.
I have another question for Jonathan, just quickly. I read a report today in the Telegraph that said that sort of the PR arm of the FSA, the Syrian Support Group, is going to plan to release a declaration signed by 9 key rebel commanders. And the point of this is to sort of pledge democratic values, pledge to work under a civilian government, commit to the ideals of democracy, and promise to protect minorities. That's obviously an attempt to curry favor with a Western audience or look to a Western audience like they're sort of legitimate, credible, and friendly actors. A, is that sincere, do you think? And B, is that a realistic sort of overture to lure us into wanting to help them out a little more?
Well, I mean, I think it's sincere on the part of many, but not all. My experience with the FSA up until now has been that, yes, there are many who are, liberal thinkers and who are truly talking about democracy. And then there are others who are going along, and these are, I'm talking about members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Right. And you have to remember that the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood was decimated in the early 1980s by the Assad regime. They haven't really had an opportunity to regroup and to gain strength. We don't know what they would look like once they gain strength. They would probably be the strongest faction within Syria, and this is troubling to me because we know that there have been members of the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood in Europe and in other places that have been involved with Al-Qaeda. So, I doubt that these are people that are true Democrats, and I think that they're going along because it's what we all want to hear here in the United States.